Bartenders should stick to mixing cocktails, not interfering in serious men's business. Mocking laughter echoed from the corner table as the brown-haired woman quietly wiped glasses and carefully adjusted the old radio in the military base bar. An arrogant officer lit his cigarette while openly mocking her expertise. But then the door suddenly burst open. A bloodied man in SEAL gear limped desperately inside. He looked straight at her and said urgently, "Code Dustfall, activate now." The entire bar fell into complete and total silence. Meet Elena Marin, 34 years old, long brown hair, thin frame, running a small bar near Military Base 47 Bravo. Young soldiers and officers come and go, treating her establishment as a place to blow off steam. A convenient stop between duty shifts and sleeping quarters. Elena says little, never drinks alcohol herself, always wiping glasses and adjusting the old radio while customers aren't looking. Some call her too bland, just a bar cleaner, the drink mixer nobody remembers. What do you know besides gin and ice? This base needs soldiers, not bartenders. The dismissal comes daily, from cocky lieutenants who see her as furniture, from sergeants who think mixing drinks is the extent of her capabilities, from officers who assume her quiet demeanor means ignorance. But Elena notices everything. She sees when Private Johnson's hand tremor suggests PTSD episodes that his counseling sessions aren't addressing. She observes how Captain Morris's drinking pattern indicates relationship problems that could affect his decision-making under pressure. She recognizes when young Corporal Lee's nervous behavior and frequent bathroom trips signal a developing addiction problem. She could help all of them, could provide guidance that might save their careers, their relationships, their lives. Instead, she serves their drinks quietly and keeps her observations to herself. Because some knowledge is too dangerous to share. Some expertise raises questions she can't answer. One evening, a new recruit stumbled in, clearly drunk beyond his tolerance level. His breathing was shallow, skin pale and clammy, classic signs of alcohol poisoning. While other customers laughed at the lightweight, Elena quickly prepared a saline solution using bar salt and bottled water. She guided the young man to a booth, applied pressure to specific points on his neck to stimulate circulation, and had him sipping the solution slowly. Within 20 minutes, his color returned. His breathing normalized. He was coherent and grateful. "How did you know to do that?" asked a medic who'd arrived expecting to find someone needing emergency transport. "Basic first aid," Elena replied simply, already cleaning the glasses from his table. "Where did you learn pressure point techniques?" "YouTube, probably," she said with a slight shrug. The medic examined the recruit, finding him completely stable and alert. No need for hospital transport, no incident report required. "That was textbook alcohol poisoning intervention," he told his partner quietly. "Whoever did that saved us a trip and probably saved that kid's life." But when he looked around for Elena, she had already disappeared into the back room, leaving only perfectly clean glasses and the soft sound of the radio playing static-filled broadcasts. This happened often. Elena would quietly handle situations that others either ignored or didn't recognize as dangerous. Soldiers who'd had too much to drink received exactly the right kind of care to get them home safely. Fights were diffused before they started with a well-timed word or perfectly placed drink. Medical emergencies were managed with techniques that seemed to come from nowhere. "How does she always know what to do?" customers would whisper to each other. "Lucky guesses," others would reply. But there was nothing lucky about it. Elena had learned crisis management in places where mistakes meant death, where split-second medical decisions determined who lived and who didn't, where keeping people calm under pressure was the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. She'd learned to read people's stress levels like diagnostic equipment, to spot developing problems before they became emergencies, to provide exactly the right intervention with whatever materials were available. But that was another life, another identity. Now she was just Elena Marin, bartender, the quiet woman who kept the drinks flowing and never caused trouble. It was safer that way, for everyone. In the drawer beneath the bar counter, Elena keeps a laminated piece of paper, written in faded military print. If you hear code Dustfall, don't ask questions. Take action. Tuesday night's rain drummed against the bar's windows when Base 47 Bravo received a classified communication. SEAL Team Echo 13 had lost contact in the border region. Their last transmission was a fragmentary signal, echo dust. Nobody in the bar knew about the emergency. Conversations continued as usual. Complaints about duty rotations, discussions of weekend plans, the typical noise of off-duty military personnel. Elena continued her routine, wiping down surfaces and adjusting the radio to secondary frequencies, a habit that seemed meaningless to observers but followed patterns only she understood. The evening crowd was thicker than usual, a mix of local soldiers and visiting personnel from other bases. The kind of night where conversations were loud and alcohol flowed freely. That's when the door crashed open. A man stumbled inside, blood streaking his face, left leg wrapped in makeshift bandages, wearing the distinctive insignia of a Navy SEAL. His tactical vest was torn, his equipment missing, but his eyes were alert and focused. He didn't approach the bar for alcohol, didn't acknowledge the sudden silence that fell over the room. Instead, he walked directly to Elena and spoke in a voice that carried across the entire establishment. Code Dustfall, activate now. Without hesitation, Elena set down her cleaning cloth and reached beneath the bar counter. From a hidden compartment that none of the regular customers had ever noticed, she retrieved a small black device with blinking lights. She connected it to the radio's emergency frequency port. The device immediately began transmitting a steady signal pattern. The bar erupted in confused voices. What the hell is she doing? Is that some kind of beacon? Who authorized civilian personnel to operate military equipment? A captain stood up from his table, clearly agitated. Ma'am, you need to explain what you're doing with that device immediately. The SEAL held up his hand, his eyes never leaving Elena's face. Stand down, Captain. This woman is operating under classification levels that your security clearance can't access. He turned to address the room, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to life and death situations. Her name isn't Elena Marin, it's Shadow Fox, former Kraken unit medical response specialist, and I'm alive right now because she once broke my collarbone to save my life. The silence that followed was deafening. Elena continued operating the beacon, her movements precise and practiced. This wasn't her first time using emergency extraction protocols. Kraken unit was disbanded, protested a major who'd been drinking alone at the corner table. That program ended years ago. Officially, yes, the SEAL replied, but Kraken operators were given autonomous emergency protocols. If any team member survived a classified operation and needed extraction, they could activate dormant assets. He gestured toward Elena. Shadow Fox has been maintaining this position for 6 years, not as a bartender, but as a deep cover extraction coordinator, waiting for someone like me to walk through that door and say the words that would bring her back online. Elena looked up from the beacon, meeting his eyes for the first time. How many? She asked quietly. 3 KIA, 2 wounded. I'm the only one mobile. Grid reference? He rattled off a series of coordinates that meant nothing to the listening soldiers, but caused Elena to make immediate adjustments to the beacon's transmission pattern. Medical supplies? Exhausted. Rodriguez has a gut shot. Stable but needs evacuation within 12 hours. Thompson took shrapnel in the leg, losing blood but ambulatory. Elena nodded and reached for a different device, a satellite communicator that had been disguised as a broken radio component. Echo Dust survivors. This is Shadow Fox. Dustfall protocol is active. Emergency extraction inbound. Hold position and maintain radio silence until pickup. The response came immediately. Shadow Fox. This is Rodriguez. Thank God. We thought Kraken was dead. Kraken doesn't die, Rodriguez. It just goes to sleep until it's needed. The entire bar was watching now, trying to process what they were witnessing. The quiet woman who'd served their drinks for months was coordinating a military rescue operation with the efficiency of a command center. Captain Morrison, who'd been particularly dismissive of Elena in the past, stepped closer to the bar. How long have you been? What exactly have you been doing here? Elena finished her transmission protocols and looked at him directly. I've been doing exactly what you thought I was doing. Serving drinks, cleaning glasses, staying invisible. The difference is that I was also maintaining emergency protocols for operations that officially never existed. She gestured toward the beacon, which continued its steady transmission. This bar sits on a strategic location with clear radio access to 3 extraction zones. If any Kraken unit member needed emergency support, this was the designated rally point. The SEAL nodded grimly. When our operation went sideways and we lost communication, I followed old protocols. Find Shadow Fox, activate Dustfall, trust that someone would still be listening after all these years. And she was, he added, looking around the room at the stunned faces. She's been here for 6 years, waiting for a call that might never come, maintaining a cover identity so deep that she convinced all of you she was just the help. Around Elena's neck, hidden beneath her collar, hangs a worn silver tag etched into the metal. KRS Fox Dustfall, 12.7 kilometers extraction. Dustfall wasn't just a code word, it was a lifeline for ghosts. The Kraken unit had been the military's most classified rescue and medical response team. When regular forces couldn't reach wounded soldiers, when extraction was impossible through normal channels, when everything had gone catastrophically wrong, they sent the Kraken. Elena had been Shadow Fox, the unit's medical specialist and emergency coordinator. For 4 years, from 2014 to 2018, she had materialized in the world's most dangerous situations, keeping soldiers alive until extraction was possible. But Kraken unit didn't exist in any official capacity. No records, no budget line items, no personnel files. Its members were recruited from special operations forces and given new identities, new backgrounds, new lives that could be activated when needed and dissolved when missions ended. Until the Greenland incident. The SEAL who'd triggered Dustfall was Master Chief Daniel Torres. As Elena continued coordinating the rescue operation, he filled in the details that had haunted both of them for 6 years. March 2018. Joint operation in hostile territory. Intelligence suggested that captured NATO personnel were being held in a remote facility. Kraken unit was tasked with extraction and medical stabilization. Elena remembered every detail. The mission had started perfectly. Infiltration successful, hostages located, extraction route planned. But intelligence had been compromised. We walked into an ambush, Torres continued, addressing the silent bar patrons who were trying to understand what they were witnessing. 12 operators went in, 4 came out. Shadow Fox was positioned as overwatch and medical support. When the shooting started, she had a choice: retreat to safety, or attempt to reach the wounded under heavy fire. Elena's hands never stopped working on the communication equipment, but her voice carried the weight of old pain. I reached 6 wounded operators, treated them under fire for 14 hours while Torres and 2 others held off enemy forces. We lost 4 soldiers, but I kept 6 alive long enough for emergency extraction. But the cost was too high, she added quietly. Kraken unit was compromised. Our identities were blown. The program was terminated. Torres nodded grimly. All Kraken personnel were given new identities and deployed to deep cover positions. We were told to maintain our covers indefinitely, but to keep emergency protocols active in case any team member needed help. He gestured around the bar. Elena, Shadow Fox, drew the longest straw. 6 years in this position, maintaining radio protocols, waiting for a signal that might never come. But you kept the faith, he said, looking directly at her. When we lost contact and I was the only one mobile enough to reach friendly territory, I followed the old protocols. I trusted that somewhere, someone was still listening. A colonel who'd been listening from the back of the room stepped forward. Elena recognized him, James Hayes, someone who'd been drinking quietly in her establishment for months without ever causing trouble. Master Chief Torres, What you're describing is a classified operation that doesn't exist in any official records. Torres smiled grimly. That's correct, sir. Which means this conversation never happened. Shadow Fox was never here, and Kraken unit remains officially disbanded. But, he added, his voice carrying steel, my teammates are bleeding out in hostile territory right now, and unless someone wants to explain to their families why bureaucracy was more important than their lives, I suggest we let Shadow Fox finish her work. Elena looked up from her equipment. Extraction team is airborne. ETA 47 minutes to target zone. Medical team is standing by for immediate trauma treatment. She turned to Torres. Rodriguez and Thompson will make it home. The relief on his face was visible to everyone in the room. Colonel Hayes approached the bar. Shadow Fox, I'm going to ask you a direct question and I need an honest answer. Elena met his eyes. Go ahead, sir. Have you been operating under deep cover orders for 6 years? Maintaining emergency protocols for a disbanded unit while posing as a civilian bartender? Yes, sir. And you've been doing this without official support, without backup, without any guarantee that you'd ever be activated? Correct. Why? Elena was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. Because Kraken unit was more than just a military operation, sir. It was a promise. We promised each other that no one would be left behind, no matter what happened to the official program. She gestured toward the communication equipment. This bar isn't just my cover, Colonel. It's a lighthouse, a beacon for anyone who served with Kraken and needs to know that someone is still listening. Torres stepped closer to the bar. There's something else you should know about Shadow Fox, sir. The medical techniques she used to keep us alive, they weren't in any manual. She improvised trauma surgery under fire using battlefield supplies. After we were extracted, I spent 3 months in military hospitals. The doctors said that whoever had provided my initial treatment had saved my life with procedures they'd never seen before. He pulled up his shirt, revealing a long scar along his rib cage. Shadow Fox performed emergency surgery on me using a combat knife and medical tape, in the middle of a firefight, while treating 5 other wounded soldiers. Elena shrugged. You had a punctured lung. It was either improvise or watch you die. That's not the point, Torres insisted. The point is that she chose to break cover, expose her position, and risk her own life to save soldiers she barely knew. Colonel Hayes studied Elena with new respect. The Kraken unit medals and commendations were classified and sealed, Elena finished. We understood that when we accepted the mission. Recognition was never the goal, sir. Bringing people home was. And after 6 years of maintaining this cover, you're still willing to risk exposure for a rescue operation. Elena looked around the room at the faces staring at her. Soldiers who'd dismissed her as just the bartender. Officers who'd treated her as invisible help. Personnel who'd never bothered to learn her name. Colonel, these men have been drinking in my establishment for months. They've shared their problems, their fears, their hopes. They may not have known who I really was, but I've been watching over them anyway. Kraken unit's mission was to bring soldiers home, whether they're wounded in combat or just trying to make it through another day at the base. The mission stays the same. The communication device crackled. Shadow Fox, this is Rescue 6. We have visual on survivors. Medical condition appears stable. Extraction in progress. Elena smiled for the first time since Torres had walked through the door. Copy, Rescue 6. Shadow Fox standing by for confirmation. Type, I owe a debt. If you've ever survived because someone you didn't know was watching over you. The extraction was successful. Rodriguez and Thompson were airlifted to a trauma center and made full recoveries. The official report listed their rescue as a routine recovery operation conducted by regular forces. Kraken unit remained officially non-existent. Elena remained officially just a bartender, but something had changed in the atmosphere of the bar near Base 47 Bravo. The mockery stopped. The dismissive comments ended. Instead, something else began. Soldiers started lingering after their shifts, not just for alcohol, but for conversation. They'd approach Elena with questions that had nothing to do with drink orders. Ma'am, my buddy's been having nightmares since his last deployment. How do I know when to worry? What do you do when someone's drinking too much but won't admit they have a problem? How do you help someone who's lost faith in the mission? Elena never claimed to be a counselor or therapist. Instead, she would serve their drinks while sharing casual observations about stress management, team dynamics, and the importance of looking out for each other. The most important skill in any unit, she told a young sergeant while polishing glasses, isn't marksmanship or tactics. It's knowing when your buddy needs help and being willing to provide it. Her approach was unlike anything they'd experienced. No formal procedures or official protocols. Just practical wisdom delivered while she maintained her role as the quiet woman behind the bar. "Why didn't you ever tell us who you really were?" asked Private Johnson during one of these conversations. Elena looked up from organizing her inventory. "Would it have changed how you acted? Would you have been more honest about your problems if you'd known I was former military?" Johnson considered this. "Probably not. I might have been more guarded." Exactly. Sometimes people need to feel safe before they can accept help. And sometimes the best way to help is to be invisible until you're needed. Word of Elena's true identity had spread quietly through the base. Not the classified details. Those remained buried. But the essential truth. The woman behind the bar understood what it meant to serve, to sacrifice, and to put others before yourself. 6 months later, Master Chief Torres returned to the bar, not wounded this time, but on official leave. "I heard about the unofficial counseling sessions," he said, taking a seat at the counter. "Just conversations," Elena replied, setting down a glass of water without being asked. "Same as always." The base psychologist says stress-related incidents have dropped 40% since last year. Alcohol-related disciplinary actions are down 60%. Elena continued her work, not acknowledging the statistics. She also mentioned that soldiers are more likely to seek help for problems before they become crises. They're looking out for each other better. Torres leaned forward. "You know what I think is happening?" Elena waited. "I think you're still running Kraken operations, not dramatic rescues in hostile territory, but quiet missions right here, preventing disasters before they happen, keeping soldiers alive in ways that don't make headlines." Elena smiled slightly. "The mission stays the same, Torres. Bring people home, whether that's from a combat zone or from the edge of making a life-destroying mistake." On the wall behind the bar, someone had mounted a small wooden plaque. Not official military recognition. Elena's service record remained classified. Just a simple acknowledgement from the people who frequented the establishment. She doesn't serve drinks. She serves hope. Below it in smaller text, someone had added, "Shadow Fox may have retired from Kraken unit, but Kraken unit never retired from her." Type, "I will live well." If you believe there are people who spend their whole lives keeping promises to those still breathing. 5 years later, the bar near Base 47 Bravo had become something unique in military culture. It wasn't just a place to drink. It was a sanctuary where soldiers could speak honestly about their struggles, where mental health wasn't stigmatized, where asking for help was seen as strength rather than weakness. Elena never sought recognition for creating this environment, never claimed credit for the lives saved by early intervention and peer support, never appeared in the base newsletters that occasionally covered the positive morale initiatives happening in the local community. She remained what she'd chosen to be, the quiet woman behind the bar who listened more than she spoke and helped more than anyone realized. But her influence was undeniable. Military families reported stronger relationships because soldiers were learning to communicate about stress and trauma. Unit cohesion improved because team members were watching out for each other more effectively. Suicide prevention programs were more successful because soldiers felt comfortable seeking help before reaching crisis points. Most importantly, a generation of military personnel was learning that service doesn't end when you take off the uniform, that looking out for others is a lifelong mission, that sometimes the most important battles are fought in quiet conversations over a glass of water. Elena never became famous, never wrote books about her experiences or gave speeches about leadership, never appeared on television to tell her war stories. She chose to remain what she'd always been, someone who used her skills to keep other people safe. But in doing so, she became something more powerful than any decorated hero. She became proof that heroism isn't always about dramatic rescues or public recognition, that the most important work happens in shadows, without witnesses or applause, that true service means being ready to help, whether anyone notices or not. If you've ever felt like your contributions don't matter because they're not visible, if you've ever wondered whether quiet support is as valuable as headline-making achievements, if you've ever chosen to help others succeed rather than seeking glory for yourself, this story is for you, because heroes don't always wear uniforms or carry medals. Sometimes they wear aprons and carry cleaning cloths. Sometimes they serve hope along with drinks. Sometimes they save lives by creating spaces where people feel safe enough to ask for help. Shadow Fox was a legend who became a bartender. Elena Marin was a bartender who became a lifeline. And every soldier who learned to recognize when a buddy needed help, to offer support without judgment, to choose service over self, became living proof that the most powerful operations aren't always military. They're human. The bartender's greatest mission wasn't the one that saved soldiers from enemy territory. It was the mission of creating a place where soldiers could save themselves, one honest conversation at a time. That mission continues every day, in every interaction, whenever someone chooses to listen instead of judge.
If you believe in stories that touch the heart like this one, leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe to The Veteran Story. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten. Real people are creating and telling stories, not mass-produced AI.